But Rania, to turn to another issue where the U.S. is meddling and involved, the country you're in right now, Lebanon, Mr. Tom Barrack has been there recently around this issue of the so-called disarmament of Hezbollah. I mean, help us understand what's happening now, because I'm seeing two different stories. I mean, I'm seeing some people say that negotiations are going on around the disarmament of Hezbollah, but it may not happen. I'm seeing other people say that the government of Lebanon has agreed to the disarmament of Hezbollah. Obviously, Hezbollah is not agreeing to that themselves. So a little bit confused what I'm seeing. So maybe just help us sort through what's actually happening here.
Well, there's news that developed in just the recent hours. There was a cabinet meeting, and the cabinet in the Lebanese government did approve this U.S. proposal to essentially disarm Hezbollah by the end of the year. And the discussions around this have been going on for quite some time. But the U.S., specifically Tom Barrack, Trump's special envoy to the region at the moment, has been putting a lot of pressure on the Lebanese government to agree to disarm Hezbollah, not just south of the Litani River, which was what was agreed to in the ceasefire agreement after the big war last year, but in all of Lebanon. And so it's causing essentially right now so far a political crisis, because in the cabinet meeting today when that decision was made, the Hezbollah ministers and those who support them all actually left the cabinet meeting. They refused to participate in this decision. And essentially what this proposal says is it directs the Lebanese armed forces, the Lebanese army, to prepare a plan due, I think, by the end of August, that essentially establishes state monopoly on all weapons, and disarms Hezbollah and all non-state actors, is how it's phrased. So it's specifically against Hezbollah's arsenal, to bring all these weapons under official government control. And it's all put in the language of the sovereignty of Lebanon, state monopoly over arms, which sounds nice. The problem, Eugene, is that while Lebanon does have an army, that army does not fight Israel. It's not even allowed to fight Israel. It doesn't have the weapons to fight Israel. In fact, what's also crazy, in the weapons that the army has confiscated so far in the sort of disarmament in the areas where Hezbollah has agreed to disarm, and, they've actually destroyed those weapons. So it's not even that they're keeping them for the state. They're destroying weapons that exist and are under the control of a group that are used solely to deter Israel. Which also, I should say, Eugene, since the ceasefire went into effect last year at the end of that big war in Lebanon, when Israel invaded and tried to occupy, the Israelis have violated the ceasefire over 4,000 times. They regularly bomb Lebanon. They regularly assassinate people in Lebanon. There's drones over Lebanon all the time, constantly violating the ceasefire in Lebanon. In fact, when the cabinet met 2 days ago to discuss this and then postpone it, the disarmament, that day after they postponed the discussions about this disarmament proposal, the Israelis assassinated somebody in the south of Lebanon. So this is happening regularly. Lebanon hasn't responded. There's been no violation from the Lebanese side whatsoever. And anyways, just to go back to what's taking place right now, is you have a government that is using its army to disarm its people and take away their ability to protect themselves from an occupier. Israel still occupies 5 points in southern Lebanon, and this government currently in charge is not capable of fighting the Israelis, nor will it fight the Israelis, though the Prime Minister Nawaf Salem continues to talk about protecting Lebanon's sovereignty, but specifically from Hezbollah, not from these outside aggressors. So anyways, the Lebanese were under a lot of pressure, though, I should say that, by Tom Barrack and the U.S. administration under Donald Trump, which is why they agreed to this absurd proposal that offers zero guarantees. The proposal says the U.S. will, get the Israelis to comply with the ceasefire, but there's no guarantees the Israelis will comply with anything. And for that reason, Hezbollah is saying they absolutely will not disarm. Because why would you disarm if you don't have a guarantee from your enemy that they will comply and withdraw their forces from where they are occupying your land. And Hezbollah exists for a reason in Lebanon. It exists because Israel occupied southern Lebanon, and it was a brutal occupation. We've talked about it on this show before. And so Hezbollah emerged under that occupation to fight an occupier, and eventually they liberated their land in the south. And the people of the south of Lebanon refused to go back to that occupation. This Israeli aggressor still exists. And the thing is also, Eugene, we see how this plays out. You see what happens when you disarm. It doesn't stop the Israelis. It emboldens them. In fact, you could make the argument the only thing standing in the way of Israel occupying southern Lebanon is the existence of Hezbollah and their weapons and their willingness to fight. And they are the people of the land in the south.
Well, can I ask you another question on that front?
That's where they live. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think that's a great point, and the point you made about Hezbollah saying they will not disarm. Is it possible, and maybe I'm just being tinfoil hat here, that this is part of a U.S.-Israeli plot to try to get the army and Hezbollah to clash, to weaken Lebanon, to facilitate Israel further invading the country?
Yeah, so let's talk about how this could escalate, because you're absolutely right. And that is the plan. The plan is to stoke, if possible, instability, civil war. Ideally, they would love Hezbollah to be disarmed, because then Lebanon would be a playground to do whatever they want more than they already do. But if they can't have that, the next best thing is to have an unstable Lebanon where people are fighting each other. And that's one of the ways this could play out, right? Israel's going to continue to strike Lebanon. The less weapons Hezbollah has, the more they'll strike, in fact. And we know that because look at Syria. Syria had a regime change. The government in Syria now wants to be friends with Israel. They've made that very clear. And rather than, accept that, Israel has bombed all of Syria's major military installations, set back their military by half a century, continues to bomb Damascus, even bombing the presidential palace a month ago, despite the fact that the president of Syria is begging Israel for normalization. So disarming and not fighting doesn't work. Look at the West Bank. Look at the PLO. Look at what happened there. Did disarming and refusing to fight the Israelis help? No. If anything, the Israelis have taken even more of the West Bank. I mean, we're seeing the West Bank be slowly, Palestinians in the West Bank be slowly strangled. So we have proof that this does not work. So, Hezbollah, for that reason, is saying they will absolutely not agree to this because of the fact that they have no guarantees. And look how it looks elsewhere, right? That's one. So what happens instead? It leads to internal tensions. It leads to a political crisis. I mean, Hezbollah has some options, right? They could withdraw their ministers, which would lead to a political crisis and would collapse the current government. And there could be street confrontations, which, we might also see happen that has a political party flavor to it. Will we see a civil war in Lebanon? I certainly hope not. I think that the government agreeing to this proposal, even if Hezbollah is saying absolutely not, buys Lebanon some time. But eventually, the Americans are going to come back and say, what do you have to show for it? Because this is basically demanding a confrontation between the Lebanese army, which, a lot of the Lebanese army won't agree to have a civil war type situation in the country. But who knows? Some of them might. And then you could have political parties and their people on the ground with guns confronting each other. So it's not a good situation for Lebanon. And the other thing I'll add, Eugene, is the situation with Syria. You also have a really concerning crisis constantly taking place in Syria, especially against minorities, against the Alawites in the coast, against the Druze in the south, where you have forces that have ties to the government who've been, in some cases, the actual government forces themselves, massacring people because of their sect. And so people in Lebanon are very concerned about that. And, one of the major players that stood in the way of the forces now in control of Syria, committing more and more atrocities in Lebanon not too many years ago, wasn't just the Lebanese army, it was also significantly Hezbollah protecting Lebanon's border from these al-Qaeda extremists who are now a part of the Syrian government. So that's another reason that the Hezbollah and the community that supports it won't agree to give up arms when they also have no guarantees that these Syrian forces won't start coming after Lebanese territory. And there's been talk about coming after Lebanese territory in various minority sects in Lebanon as well. So it's a really it's a really bad situation in Lebanon that is completely the fault of the United States. But also it's really sad because here you have another country where the government is charged, rather than using its forces and its power to protect its people, because the people who live in the south of Lebanon are Lebanese. Those people should technically be represented by this government, by this cabinet. But instead of using the Lebanese army to protect those people from American imperialism and constant Israeli aggression, they are using the Lebanese army to disarm their people from having any measures of self-protection. And it's a really, really sad state of affairs, because you see this this paradigm replicated across the region in one country after another, where you have these puppet governments put in place or elevated and empowered by the United States to serve American imperialism and Israeli hegemony across the region. And you have it now happening in Lebanon.